Welcome to the SwimSwam podcast. I'm today's host, Coleman Hodges. Joining us today, the head coach and associate head coach of Arizona State swimming and diving, Bob Bowman and Herbie Behm. Bob, Herbie, how's it going?
Going great. Thanks for having us. Yeah, great. Thank you.
I'm excited to sit down and chat with you. ASU has been making a lot of noise this season, and I'm just excited to sit down and get an update from Tempe, from you all. We're going to get to the swimming side of it and the competition side of it in a minute. But first, you guys went through some coaching changes. Rachel Stratton-Mills, who was your associate head coach, went to Northwestern to head up their men's and women's swimming and diving programs. And I'm curious, you made a couple of coaching hires. You promoted your volunteer to assistant coach. But I'm curious how that's changed just the energy and the structure of coaching on deck at ASU.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot. But we're so happy for Rachel, number one. She certainly deserves that position and has done an amazing job here. And we're excited to see what she does at Northwestern. But what her departure allowed us to do was basically reorganize the whole team. And, there's been a dynamic over the last several years about, the men's team, the women's team, where are they in their trajectory? And everybody knows about the men because they've done pretty well. And the women are some steps behind. And there are a couple reasons for that, if you look at it, it kind of makes sense. The first thing was in 2020, I guess, the COVID year, right? The women were pretty much where the men were. Like we had a very good Pac-12 championship where Emma Nordin 433, Sierra Runge 434 on no rest, no shave, no nothing, because I was saving it for the NC2As, which didn't happen, right? So I'm very confident we would have been a top 10 team there, right? And then we could have built off of that. Well, what happened was everything stopped for COVID. And as good as the COVID redshirt year was for our men, it was probably as bad for our women because a lot of these women were at the end of their careers and extending it another year did not help them. Sierra never swam again. Cam Curry never swam again. So we had all these people that could have really helped us and put us in the picture left. And then after that, during this process, we had already made the decision internally in 2020 that we were going to split the programs. We were going to go, Herbie and I were going to take the men, Rachel's going to take the women, Derek. We're going to kind of go at it like that. So behind the scenes, we were doing things where we were putting more women's only groups, men's only groups. The recruiting, Herbie and I were very heavily focused on the men. Rachel was heavily focused on the women. And so that's kind of how we got into this situation where I was more focused on the men than I was because I didn't want to recruit people who were coming here to swim for me and say, hey, by the way, we're cutting the program. I'm over here now. So that's where we were in 2020, 2022. And as we moved through, we kind of all got together and decided that it didn't seem like that was really going to be the best thing for us to do for ASU. That we talked to people where programs had been together, had split, are back together. We did a lot of research and we decided that we think it's much better for us to run a combined program. And when Rachel left, we basically changed all of the groups because Herbie and I coached one woman and he coached none the last 2 years, right? So now every group on our team has men and women in it. And it's just been so much better. Would you agree?
Oh yeah.
What do you think?
It's been super fun. I think it kind of adds a whole new energy to what we have. I think we're always trying to change how we do things and make it new, and just having new people in the groups have been really fun, and seeing how well they've been doing has been a lot of fun also. So yeah, I personally have been having a blast with that.
Yeah, me too. And I think one of our concerns was that the women would be kind of overwhelmed by the men because they're kind of on this level and these crazy things are happening in practice and in the meets. And it's just been the opposite. They've been uplifted. Like we've already swum times that we swam at Pac-12s in the relays for the women,
Yeah.
like in the first 2 dual meets. And to be honest, I think our NC State dual meet with the women was our best meet we've had since I've been here. So we're definitely, I think, seeing the benefits of having a more integrated combined program with all the coaches involved on both sides. So that's probably our biggest change.
That's fascinating to hear. I mean, I think with a college team, what I've come to realize is that there's so many moving parts, right? It's a big team, big coaching staff. You have, I don't know, somewhere between 60 and sometimes 70 athletes between the men and the women. And so when you have a combined program, there's so many different ways to do these things, right? And it's great to hear about experimenting with one way and then saying, okay, maybe this isn't working, let's try this thing.
Yeah.
And so that's really great to hear. I know we had at some point you had the fruit groups, right? You had mangoes, you had apples, oranges, I think. So now what is the training structure and the group structure look like on a week-to-week basis in training?
We still have the fruit groups, but we kind of modified them. Herbie, you want to go through them?
Yeah, we've got a lot. It'll be a test to remember. We've got a mango group, which is my group. We've got coconuts, which is Austin's group. We've got limes, that's Derek's group. We've got mandarins, that is Alex's group. I might be mixing.
No, that's right. That's right.
Logan's the grapefruits. Bob is the oranges, and in reality, a lot of people are just kind of like V8 splashes where they're mixing.
Yeah, exactly. We got a lot of mixing this time. This year we got a lot of mixes.
Yeah,
so that's good.
So it's not. It's really like I think it's a good thing. There's not quite as much identity into what the group is, you know, because so many people are moving back and forth, and it's like it's been really good because it's still. I mean, we always did those groups to try and make it as individualized for those people. So we have like competition and kind of specificity and individuality in one group. But now we're kind of, I think it's because we're learning kind of each other's strengths and weaknesses as a coaching staff, and then looking at each individual's strengths and weaknesses. We can kind of put them in different places for different days of the week or periods of time. And we're constantly reassessing that because it's, I mean, people are constantly changing. So we're having to constantly change what the plan is as well for each person. But like we said, it's been really cool to see that and to have, we all have kind of different days of the week that are different emphases, and putting people in that kind of adds a new excitement because it's, I know some of the kids who've been here for now 5 years now, or even longer than that. It's kind of been like reinvigorating. I mean, somebody like Jack Dolan's a good example, who's on his 5th year where he's been here the whole time. And now he's been swimming really his best times ever. Like every dual meet has been right at his best times ever. And I think part of that is because of, it feels like a whole new team in a very good way, because it's just so much different types of energy that I think, is important. So it's not just repeating the same thing every single year.
Yeah. So in terms of, I know you said there's not as much of an identity per fruit group. So I guess another thing that happens on a week-to-week basis is that, like, do you have certain days where you know what the focus will be of any given workout on that day?
Every day of the week, we know what each of us is doing and how that fits into the plans for the kids that we got. Like, I'll give you an example of how this works, and it's worked really well so far. I mean, we'll see. We haven't seen the greatest the end result yet, but it's definitely moving, and you'll know soon. But Simone Manuel, right? Sprinter, right? So she came in, started out with me because she was pretty far behind in a fitness level, right? So she started doing more aerobic type work, and we built it up over a period of time. And then we started adding sessions over with Herbie, right? So she could have a little more power and sprint work. And then kind of midway through last year, we just said, why don't you just make the switch to Herbie? So she was kind of all with me, and then she was kind of in the middle, and then she did all Herbie for a while. And it didn't really, we just didn't feel like she was continuing to make progress doing that. So now she's back on the thing. I think right now her system is, yeah, I know it is. It's 5 times with me, 4 times with Herbie, and it's working great.
Yeah.
And she's getting the power work with Herbie and the specific sort of very high quality sprinting near the end of the week. We did that deliberately. And then she's getting the more kind of threshold based work that she really did in high school and wanted to kind of continue with me in the 4 days in the early part of the week, first 4 days of the week. And it's worked great. And when you see her, you're going to know it's working. She has made tremendous progress. Am I right?
Yeah.
Right.
It's been pretty exciting to see. And I think we'll find out.
We'll find out. But like, I'm very optimistic about it. But that's a good example, right? Then we have people like Olivia. Olivia spent a whole year with me 100%. Then she's working on her second year with Herbie 100%. And that's exactly the right thing for her to do. She got a good kind of background, like transition from Georgia to here with me. And now she's doing the Herbie stuff, which she responds to perfectly. So we have a lot of different variations of that and there's kind of a spectrum, I guess, of those things. But the new way we've got it makes it a lot easier to do those things with the college people.
Yeah, I'm always curious about this, again, because it's such a big team.
Yeah.
You know, can you talk about the dialogue that goes in, or I guess the two-way street relationship you develop with these athletes, especially if they're, you know, again, new to this system, if they're just getting there, if they're not like a Jack Dolan who you've seen kind of progress under your various systems for a while. You know, how do you make those decisions of like, okay, today you're going to be here, tomorrow you're going to be here. Today is a coconut, tomorrow's a mandarin.
You want to do that one?
Yeah. It's like kind of up to us, as in the staff, as well as them, to constantly just be evaluating what we're doing. There's a lot of stuff that we do where we're like recording the times and keeping track of that. So that's something where if we need to look back at how each individual is progressing, we have concrete data on that. But it's also very much up to us to just constantly be looking and seeing how they're doing. I mean, some specific examples is like, I mean, 2 of our senior/5th years, David Schlicht and Alex Colson, have class conflicts. So we have this kind of middle of the day Wednesday practice that kind of both groups are almost always doing fast quality stuff. And it was like, okay, Bob, we're going, his changed where it was like, okay, this Thursday, they're going to be suiting up. And I was like, okay, well, we're also suiting up today. Do we want them doing both? And it's like, yeah, let's see how they do.
That was actually, you know, we love the suits here. So anyway.
So it's like, okay, let's see how they do that on 2 days back to back of very high intensity, when normally it's like a really high intensity, a really kind of more high volume, very low intensity. But that's where it's like making the individual choice of, okay, both of these guys have a pretty high capacity. They can maintain, they should be able to do that. And it's kind of a different type of test, knowing like, okay, their Friday, it'll probably be a little easier. We're not just going to slam them every single day. But then the same thing, like that same week, it was, okay, the reverse for Simone, where she was like, okay, she's going to do Wednesday. That was easy, like low intensity with Bob, then come do another low intensity with me. Then Friday afternoon, Saturday were really high quality and fast for her. And it was like, okay, just based on the previous couple weeks, what we've seen, what we've learned about her, that's the better call for the whole week. And kind of keeping that in mind is really important in how we do that. And it's like kind of understanding each individual's capacity in all these different things, and then knowing obviously what's coming later in the week is important. So it's not just making up like, hey, this set looks kind of good, like something they'll be good at. It's like what'll allow for that constant work but never overwork.
So you brought up the suits and wearing, you know, just wearing suits often, and we've talked about the reason why that you wanted to do that and, you know, wear suits and dual meets. And I think at this point most colleges are or a lot of programs around the country are wearing suits in practice. often. How do you feel like you've done this now for a while? What do you feel like you gain from that? Or how do you feel like this experiment has panned out so far?
Well, last year we wore training suits the first semester in the dual meets. And then we suited up for all the second semester. And we really liked that. So this time we were just suited up for all the meets. We just did it this whole year. And I don't know. We suited up against NC State. They were happy to do it. And Georgia was happy to do it. I don't think anybody felt bad about those meets. That it wasn't like awesome.
Yeah.
Right? Herbie, explain why we're
Yeah.
doing it again.
I mean, our reasoning why is like every meet, it's giving feedback to what we're doing and how we're developing. Obviously, in swimming, we're a sport to where we want to peak at the right time, and that's the most important thing. And getting the actual information of how you've progressed through the season is important. And when you have all of these meets unsuited and then say, oh, look, everyone went best times at the most important meet. It's like, well, obviously, because like, first off, in a dual meet, it takes about 2 hours. You're swimming 4 times in 2 hours. And then you go to a prelims final meet where you're swimming 1 race a day. So there's already kind of some change in what you're looking at. But if you have the like consistent feedback as to, okay, every time you're in the same suit, your same just thing that you're going to be doing, like you're comparing the same thing rather than comparing apples and oranges. So that's what we think. And it's in my honest opinion, I think it's rarely the swimmers who don't want to suit up. It's the coaches who don't want to face the reality that their training might not be good. Because it's like, I mean, I know for a fact there's been times in the past where I've had a kid go really fast without a suit on, and then we put a suit on, shave, and they just go a little bit faster. And the reality is they got worse in the taper phase. So like I messed that up, but they dropped to 10th in a 50 and it's like, well, it still worked. Like you still win a season best. And it's like, no, you didn't, because you didn't have a suit on it at that dual meet. So actually looking at that kind of shines the light on the coach if the training is working, and then we get better feedback on that each time, and each season we'll understand how we're doing rather than like, okay, we're not wearing suits at all until this very last meet where everybody's going to feel good about themselves. But is that a true peak, or have we just lowered kind of all the other peaks throughout the season?
Well,
I love that perspective, because it is interesting. We've internally talked about this, that it's like, well, if you don't suit up for dual meets, then yeah, you have times down here, and then there's this huge upswing of times, right? When you get to, for instance, a mid-season meet or a championship meet, you put a suit on, you shave, but it's like, well, I'd rather have like times up here and then only get a little bit faster at a big meet, but that from a fan's perspective, that just keeps it exciting the whole season.
Right. Yeah.
It's just better spectating.
And I think the other thing that I actually think is probably the most important part is like when we go to these meets, I remember what it felt like to where it's like, okay, we get 1 meet a year to wear a suit, shave, have an actual opportunity to go a best time. And there was so much pressure on that meet. And the thing that I specifically remember thinking was like I don't feel like I know how to handle this pressure because it's all new, rather than like right now to where it's okay, it's October for these previous meets, like you're going to put a suit on and we're seeing where you're at.
Yeah.
It's a lot of pressure at that point. And it's kind of hard for the coach to be like, hey, I'm going to add pressure to the swimmer, because a lot of times they don't want that.
Yeah.
But that's what's preparing them to figure out how to handle that. And it is looking at the reality of this time, and it means something. And you can't say, oh, well, I'm going to put a suit on and it's going to fix it. It's like, no, this is where you are. If you want to go 41 in 100 free and you just go 45-2, you can't say, oh, I'm going to put a suit on and I always drop 3 seconds when I put a suit on. It's like, no, this is where you are. And that can be difficult, but I think that's more preparation to where you're not just putting your faith in something outside of yourself, like the suit or the new suit or whatever it is. You're like, figuring out how to handle it on your own. And it removes a lot of the superstitions of that, because I know that's a big part of our sport of like, when these meets come, it's like, okay, I have to have a brand new suit that I cut the tag off when I get to the pool, like put it on for the first time. I got to drink this pre-workout at this time. And like, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
So trying to like remove that early, like all the time. So every time it's like, oh, wow, you just win a best time here. Why was that? Was it because of how you prepared? Was it how you swam the race? And you're getting more just experience a lot faster rather than just hoping.
Yeah, it holds everybody accountable. We're accountable because we're going to know what the training's actually doing, because all things are equal, right? The suits are equal. But it holds them accountable because they can't hide behind, well, when I put a suit on, I'll be fat. No, you're going to, here it is. Do it today or don't. But, so I love that aspect of it, and it's been real successful for us, and we're going to keep doing it.
Yeah. Similarly, that's why I always liked when you would hear about like in a World Cup circuit or a meet circuit like that, when pros, you would hear about pros shaving, right? And obviously suiting up as well, but that to Herbie's point, that always freaked me out, right? When I would have to shave, and it's like, this feels so different. Right. But it's like, then you hear about people shaving, which takes a whole lot more work, and I'm not saying people should shave for every meet, but you practice doing it, right? You get the reps in, so it's not this uncomfortable stimuli that turns into pressure. So you've had a few dual meets, as you mentioned, so far this season. So how do you feel like those have gone? I can gush about, from a fan's perspective, how they've gone, but what do you guys think in terms of what you've seen from the swimmers you're familiar with, as well as some of the newcomers who are new to this system and just kind of getting into it?
Could not be more pleased.
Yeah.
I mean, there are always races you think they can do better. There are technical things that can be corrected. Some people maybe can use a different strategy, but the overall effort and energy, and frankly, the results have been anything we could hope for. It's not like we don't do the training and we just it's not like, the other thing about the suits is they think when you wear a suit, you spend 3 weeks resting and then you put on the suit. No, we're at 16K on Monday and Tuesday, and then they swim the meet with the suit on. But it's, so I've been very pleased with those results. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, same thing. It's been really cool to see, and specifically like with some of the women. Like I remember our last meet, this girl Indigo Armand, who's had a very good season so far. She was like, every race I've had so far this season has been a lifetime best, and literally every one, because it was like, even best time in the individual, let off the relay a couple hundreds faster, like 2 meets in a row. So it's like, okay, the streak might end, but it's pretty solid, pretty solid start so far.
I mean, we're at one of these early meets. I think it was Georgia, right? And we were not too thrilled with either one of our men's relays, right? They swam pretty well, right? We're like, hey, are you guys going to get it together? Come on, step up this, and this. And they're like, oh yeah, they both made the A Cup for NCAAs, which used to be like a dream. We didn't even think we'd have to go to Pac-12s and give everything to try to do it. We're like, oh, well, maybe that's not too bad, but still, you can be a lot better than that. Don't just settle for that.
So that's kind of a funny juxtaposition, and I'll get into a few specifics after this question, but it's kind of fun. Let's how do you deal with where those two, so you've combined the training for men and women, but then how do you kind of balance that where the men are obviously, vying for a national title this year, they're at that level where it's like, guys, come on, you got to do better. Oh, you just went the A cut. Where then the women,
we try not to tell them anything is too good, right? You're not that good. Come on,
right?
You way better.
Right. Whereas as the women are going best times, and it's I feel like it might be easy as a coach to be like, that was great, like, all right, but then you still want to elevate them and get them to set their sights on like, okay, here's what we want in the future.
Right. Well, it's a step-by-step thing, right? And I really think it's the same with both, but you just kind of it's just on a different little time scale.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. Like I think it's pretty exciting to where like when we swam NC State, it was like, we knew it was going to be really close and competitive with the men, and we kind of knew it was heavily favored to NC State there on the women's side, but getting to where it was like, okay, competitive in really every single race on that, men and women, was a lot of fun. And it's kind of like, I mean, I kind of think of it, it feels a lot like the men a couple years ago when it was like, okay, chasing, like, okay, if we beat this team, it's going to be a really good and exciting thing. And on the men's side, it's kind of like, okay, if we ever lose, it's going to be very disappointing.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, it's kind of a fun balance to where, and I think it helps the women as well, because every team that comes, at least every combined team, is like, the men's side is really knowing like, okay, they're going to put suits on, they're going to do this stuff that some people will probably piss them off, so they're like ready to go. But the girls have responded so well to that. Like, I mean, we beat NC State in that 400 free relay at the end, where it was like it's a pretty big thing, to where like they had Catherine Burkhoff. I know they had some people at Pan Am's, but they had a really talented team. To see our girls like step up and go a really fast time
and win some individual events, that's stuff we have not been doing. So that's where we focus our energy. Good job on that, but let's go faster this way.
Yeah, because I guess in reality, I think it's not that much different for anybody, because I think what's really good about our whole culture and environment is like every person on the team, like literally every single person, is totally into being the best possible swimmer they can be. There's some of the men who if they get a chance to swim at Pac-12s, that will be like their lifetime achievement. Some are obviously trying to break world records and things like that, but it's where every single person has that viewpoint. It makes it to where, in a way, not worried too much about the result of that. And that's what we're trying to get them to understand. And it does, I think it kind of helps when it's, okay, the team goals are slightly different outcome, but we're all trying to figure out how to do the process the same way. And yeah, it's been really fun to kind of expand that, because I think that's what's helped our team get to where it is. It's like, okay, a few years ago it started where there's maybe 7 or 8 people realistically who could do anything at an NCAA level. And then it's kind of expanding that out, and it's not only us teaching how to do that, but now it's like, okay, the kids teach each other, and they're all kind of working together in that. And like, everyone has such a different set of skills that it makes it fun and very rewarding, because now when it's even bigger, to where, okay, now there really is like, you have 70 teammates who all have kind of a different skill set, different things they're working on, different things they're working towards, and everybody's kind of bought into that. Okay, we're just trying to get ourselves to the highest spot possible. That makes kind of the results take care of themselves.
Yeah, I'm excited just listening to this. I'm like, all right, let's go grow a team. But all right. So on a specific note, I do have to ask about Ilya Kharun, who's just come in, broken school records, gone NCAA leading times at one point. How did he do it? We knew he was a world level swimmer coming into your program, and obviously what Ron has done at the Sandpipers kind of speaks for itself. But what have you guys seen from Ilya that has, amazed you, surprised you, really impressed you? I guess in training and in racing, because he's kind of come out swinging, and it seems like his momentum is just carried over since.
Well, obviously he's a very talented young man, but Ron and Sandpipers gave him the background, right? Amazing, right? So he has an excellent work ethic. He's very tuned into the process that we're trying to raise. We got a little, Ron and I had discussed it, and it really worked well. He actually came to us in June of last year, so I could do a taper with him at Worlds to get ready for this coming year, right? So, he was with us for a while. So we know him a little better than we know some of the other freshmen that just came in. So he kind of seamlessly fit into what we're doing. Because he's got that kind of, he can handle aerobic work, he can do the quality work, he knows that, you know, how all that stuff goes. But he's really improved technically. We've improved a lot of his turns. We're working on his breakouts, a lot of things like that. And he's a kind of kid, I'll give you a real specific example. Monday, he did 16,000, 8 in the morning in about 1 hour and 42 minutes. Just kind of mixing, swimming, kicking, pulling. It wasn't anything special, but it was moving along. At night, we did a very hard set where they did 4 100s on a minute freestyle, and he averaged about 50. I was on him about being 51s and 52s. So he's mainly 52s. Then they did 2 100s easy on 120, 6 50s fast on 50, and then 2 50s fast easy on a minute, right? Eddie put it on you put up Eddie's set. That's his set. I keep doing it over and over. But anyway, we did 4 rounds of that, and each round was a different stroke. So they did a flyback breast free of the 650s, and then the free was all on a minute. And he was super good. So that was 8K. He was going like 22s by the end of the fly. He was like 24 and 5s on back. This is weak thing. Pretty good on breast. And then on free, he was going like 22s. So high quality, big volume, 16K. The next day did 7,000 long course meters, 10 300s was the main set. It was just kind of a basic thing, and I didn't ask too much, but he started like 316. He ended up at like, I think 304 or 5. So not amazing, but not terrible, right? That was the main thing. Then they did about 6,000 in the morning, pretty low key, technically focused, right? Wednesday morning. And then Wednesday night, we did a little thing that I like to call a speed check, which we do every now and then. I haven't even done it this year. This is the first one. And the way it works is they warm up like it's a meet, they suit up, and then they time 150, 100, and a 50 every 15 minutes. So we did it by strokes. He did fly, right? So he did 150 fly. He was 112.7 out in 46.9. Then he swam down, came back for his 100, 44.7. Another school record. That's the second one. And then he swam down, and then he came back for a 50, 19.6, 50 fly from a dive. So that's how he's so good.
What?
He's got speed and he can do the long stuff. He can do everything. It's very Leon.
Is this timing?
Right?
Is this coach's watch or timing?
It is coach's watch, but I mean, how far off am I at 19.6? Maybe it's 19.8. Sorry.
Yep. No, that's fair. That's fair. It's got to be under 20.
Yeah, he's pretty solid on those. And but he's a very special kid. He's got that kind of speed all the time, and he can do the big training. So you put those together, you can start doing some kind of amazing things. And you know, I think he can be a lot better. He's only scratching the surface.
So I mean, this is maybe you don't have an answer for this, but you know, I'm sure you've seen several of these athletes, but there are, you know, some kids who do not swim that fast in the season and then go really fast in the season. There are some athletes who just swim fast all year round. I think there are several of those athletes at Arizona State.
Yeah.
Suit or no suit, right?
Yeah.
Is there a common denominator for that, or is there something that you notice through those athletes where it's like they can, when the time comes, they're going to go fast no matter what?
I don't know. I think there are a lot of factors into that. And I think a lot of it's our training program. You know, there's this I think there's a kind of strongly held belief out there that you can't do hard training and swim fast. Michael was always close to his speed. He hardly ever went to a meet where he didn't swim pretty well, and he did 80,000 a week all the time, right? You know what I mean? It's like what you're adjusted to, what you're adapted to, how that's being, you know, the work we did early in the week. Monday, very hard. Tuesday was aerobic, but it was long. Kind of set him up to do something yesterday, right? And it wasn't just Ilya. Everybody was fast. Regan went 117, 150 back yesterday, which I thought was insane. And then she did a mediocre 49.1 right after that. So, okay, like, can you just get it going? You should be going 48. But it's like, I think when they're like that and they're very fit and they're used to a program and you plan it the right way, you can manipulate it so they can be at their speed during that. And I think we do that pretty well.
Yeah, that's where it goes back to the individual capacity and understanding that. And that's why we have these kind of different groups, because there's some people who might be a 200 or 400 swimmer who, like a 16K, they're not prepared for it, even though they're good at that race.
Yeah.
It's raising the individual's capacity, not saying every person has to do exactly what Ilya did to swim those times. It's like, okay, if they can, they'll probably swim pretty fast.
Yeah.
But if they can't, it's not like just killing them isn't going to get them there. We have to give them one step in front of what they currently have in order for them to keep climbing up. And then they get to a point to where they're doing stuff like what Ilya does and what several other kids on the team are able to do. But it's not, it's like creating a program that allows their talent to actually shine while still building up. Just like what he said, it's not like overly trying to fit a certain thing, like this kind of thing a lot of colleges do, or like, oh yeah, like you'll come here, you'll never do a threshold set, and we'll only do sprint stuff. And it's like, why? Like, it's like after 4 years of doing, even if like, okay, I like a lot of my sets, but if we do them all the time for 4 whole years, like by the end of that, the kids aren't going to be getting anything from it. So it's knowing like how to change that and give the athlete what they need to keep taking steps forward, rather than like, okay, here's what we do here and it works for everybody and it's great. Because like, well, that might work in recruiting, but then a year or two down the road when it stops working, you have to kind of face the reality.
I mean, well, I was just thinking, we have the opposite of a Simone too. Probably one of our best 500 guys, if not our best one, is 5 times with Herbie and 4 times with me. Because he doesn't do well on the 16K. It never has. We tried it for years. It doesn't work. So, and so far he's done pretty well.
Yeah.
So it's all about the individual and what we can do to help them keep progressing.
This was an enlightening answer, so I'm glad I asked that question.
Long one. Sorry.
No, that's exactly what I wanted, because as we were talking about one of the topics before, I was just thinking about the traditional in swimming. Okay, train hard, get in a hole, come out of hole, taper, go fast time. It's like that's. I'm glad to see that that's not the only way to do things in swimming. Speaking of Regan Smith, though, she broke an American record by a sizable margin pretty recently. Can you give me your coaching expertise and analysis on that rate? Obviously, I think Regan is one of those athletes who swims fast a lot. We've seen her several seasons just tear it up in the pro swims. And she can go fast a lot, but especially after that 203 200-meter butterfly we saw from her last summer. What did you think of this 148.3 in a dual meet by herself?
I think it was very logical, and you just knew it was going to happen. Like seeing her train the weeks leading up, like we were just doing these sets like the one I described with Ilya, and she'd be going 25 flat or 24 high for 50s fly over and over and over, right? I actually told the pool, we were going to have like more than one person swim in the heat. I was like, no, Regan has to swim by herself because the time needs to count, and you got to have the guy ready to measure the pool after. I did it all before because I was like, something's going to happen here. I told these guys, this is going to be ridiculous. You just kind of know. So she's just training on a high level, which is nothing new, right? But we're trying to, keep that going. We've learned a lot about how she needs to prepare, I think, for the major meets. And we're going to be working on some things to make sure that we get that right. That's what I didn't get right last summer. But yeah, it wasn't a surprise at all. If you saw her training, you'd be like, well, of course she's going to, why didn't she go 147? I mean, she's just that kind of swimmer, and she's just a good fit for what we do. And we're a good fit for her in terms of that. She's very no nonsense. Like, she hardly makes a peep. She just gets in and swims. And then, and then you'll be like, hey, I thought that was pretty good. She's like, yeah, well, did you think so? I'm like, yeah, you went 10, 24-second butterflies. I think it's pretty good. Like she was like very self-effacing that way. So I love that. But yeah, I think it's just a logical thing that she's doing it.
Yeah. What fruit groups is Regan?
She's an orange. She's full orange.
She's full orange.
I do think there's going to be a time where she does mango, because I want her to but for the fall, we've been trying to if you look at an Olympic cycle and what happens as we kind of get closer, I want to put money in the bank in the fall, and that's what we've been focusing on. Like the pros, none of the people in my group, for whatever reason, I haven't even done a power set. Like there's been not a bucket, not an anything. It's just been kind of straight up capacity type training. Obviously, a lot of it has had some speed and we kicked a lot. And after this next little, my pros are going to altitude Saturday until the US Open. That's going to be a thing that they'll add to. They're going to start doing a little power work up there just to kind of touch it. And then my group, the college group, will full blown be into it after our invite in 2 weeks. So that's kind of how we do it. So they're just kind of putting money in the bank for the summer, because you don't really have a big training time in the summer after NCAAs. It's kind of everything comes up quickly.
Yeah. So I have a question. This could be like totally just my SwimSwam brain going, oh, they're scheming. These coaches have all these ideas and this is perfectly planned. But when your meet schedule came out, I noticed that all the fall dual meets were at home. And I was like, this is because they want to get their pre-Olympic year aerobic training in. They don't want to travel. This is totally Bob Bowman mastermind at work.
Well,
True
maybe
it
could be. That's a good way to think about it, because we didn't really miss much. We didn't have to travel, so that was good. Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
So to wrap this conversation up, you're going to NC State's invite in Greensboro for your college midseason meet in a couple weeks, and then I assume you've got pros going to US Open in Greensboro a couple weeks after that. So again, we talked about wearing suits in the season. We talked about kind of what the season's leading up to. Where does midseason, and I think historically the midseason invite has meant a lot of different things to a lot of different teams. Sure. What are you looking for? Yeah, both from the NC State invite and US Open from your swimmers at these two midseason meets.
I'll just do it quickly. I want to get a little bump in performance off of what they've done, and they will get a short rest for that. We've kind of gone over that. It's like a 1 week thing in my group, and for some events it's more, because I think there are different requirements and different people. Some people will rest longer, but for the most part, I want to see what they will do on a short rest. Some will shave, some will not. Just kind of depends on who they are, right? Leon and Ilya probably not. Some of the other people will. But just to kind of give them a little bit more than they've had, but not everything. So we've had great success with that in the past, some very fast times doing that. So, and it's the same at US Open. The pros are going to have an altitude cycle, so they're going to come down and get a bump from that, hopefully. And then they'll get some rest going in, 4 or 5 days going into US Open, and see how that works as well. So that's kind of what, how fast can they swim on what we give them? Right? We always try to tell the kids, it's not necessarily about the time you swim, it's how you got there, right? What was the process of getting there, and how will that change then to make it better? What do you think?
Yeah, kind of exactly that same thing. Like I think it's incorrect when people say they have the exact plan of like the specifics of training throughout the whole thing, but it's like this mid-season gives us a lot of feedback as to how they respond to rest, who will need to rest more, who will need to rest less, who will need to do the same exact thing. But yeah, going as fast as we can and then figuring out how to be better after that.
You've been listening to the SwimSwam podcast. Stay tuned for new episodes every week. You can take SwimSwam podcast on the go by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Look for links in the description below, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos as well.